One Piece is rich in characters, lore, and epic clashes, but one of the most memorable fights happens on the island of Marineford. I think you know what I'm talking about. Before we get into the two big contenders, let's talk about what brought this insane fight on. Marineford's prison holds the most deadly criminals, and is also the place where they're executed when their threat potential is too high. Portgas D. Ace was sentenced to such a fate, mainly because of a bad matchup, and being Goldie Roger's only child. Had he been killed in the way that was planned initially, maybe the outrage and disastrous loss of life that came after would have been lessened. Instead, Akainu Ika Sakazuki made sure to put Ace in a specific position and killed him as he was protecting Luffy from the deadly attack. That's when all hell breaks loose. The fact that this violent death and the devastation and shock of everyone around is televised lends to the events that come after. The whole world has seen not only the loyalty of pirates towards each other, but the brutality that the Navy can dish out. This is where things start to heat up. In the pirate corner, we have Whitebeard, aka Edward Newgate, the captain of his own fleet, cherished by his pirates and battle-scarred from decades of using his earth-shaking ability. He's got a large bounty to match all his unbelievable feats. A rival of Goldie Roger, a former Rocks pirate, and let's not forget he was one of the Yonko Four Emperors before his death. In the Navy corner, we have Sakazuki with his codename Akainu, a vice admiral known for his extreme justice and insanely strong magma logia fruit. He's already got some hits off on Whitebeard and will stop at nothing to take out high-profile threats, like using a buster call against non-combatants and children. Who will win? Kainu's on a mission, and that involves ending anyone that poses a threat to the balance of the world. Evidently, that meant he was going for Luffy next, his original target. As he rushes after them, Marco and Jinbei's interruption gives Whitebeard time to approach with his massive presence. His giant angry figure looms behind Akainu, ready to destroy him for taking his son away. He pounds his large weapon on the ground, the reflection of it crossing Akainu's stunned face. As the Vice Admiral turns around, he sees the purest form of rage that anyone would be terrified to face. All Akainu can do is brace himself for the strike when it comes, and Whitebeard wastes no time as he reels back, charging up his fist with his tremor fruit in a growl. This practically flattens Akainu into the ground, forcing Akainu down even with him fighting back the best he can. The shockwave blows air in all directions, making it hard to even stand near the two combatants, so Whitebeard's crew rush away. It seems more like a gravity power with how it turns Akainu nearly as thin as paper for a second. Whitebeard isn't satisfied though. He leaps up to get more distance between him and his enemy and drops down with his leg covered in power, barely giving Akainu time to escape. The Vice Admiral rolls away, minimizing the damage as he tries to recover, but Whitebeard rushes after him, swinging his massive Naginata blade down so hard it creates a cloud of dust. That's enough for Akainu to use it as cover, launching flaming hot shots from his magma-covered fist. Whitebeard doesn't stop his approach, tanking them all head-on and with his bare and already injured chest. The final burning hit strikes Whitebeard's head, melting half his face with it. Too bad the anime had to censor that, and made it seem like Whitebeard only lost his mustache. The air clears, and they rush each other, with Akainu fighting back more intently now. Whitebeard grips his sword and blocks the attacks with his left arm. It's hard not to notice how tiny Akainu looks in comparison to the pirate captain here. He can barely reach Whitebeard with a kick before he's thrown across Marineford with a single punch. Thoroughly out of breath and definitely hurting, at least if we go according to how much blood is on his face. Akainu lies on his back as Whitebeard slowly approaches. With a beast-like groan, Whitebeard leans down, winding up his arm for another massive blow, but this time Akainu overcomes his pain and fear, launching magma at the giant pirate. Using his Logia's capabilities, he moves more fluidly and closes the distance with a molten heat. Akainu turns to his powerful Hellhound blow and makes another hole in Whitebeard's already devastated body full of injuries, clearly burning Whitebeard's insides the way he did with Ace not long before this. His crew certainly noticed the similarity, the worry plain as day across their faces. Akainu continues having the upper hand, shoving his unfathomably hot fist deep inside Whitebeard's chest. It hurts enough that Whitebeard seems like he's done with the crackle of flames inside him. As Whitebeard falls to one knee, Akainu finally gets to look down at his pirate enemy, breathing heavily, but not letting his guard down this time. He even has the gall to tell Whitebeard to resign. Whether he means to lay down his life or give up on revenge, it doesn't matter. Whitebeard looks completely finished, the fire raging from within his flesh. His face is hidden behind the flames, but he still grips his Naginata. Seeing this, his crew all panic and worry for the man they see as a father. Whitebeard's boys call out to him, hoping he'll respond to their pleas, but the one voice, the one child that wakes him from this state is Ace. As he opens his eyes, the fire burns before them, and it's like he's seeing Ace's devil fruit. Eventually, Whitebeard's vision clears up, and he sees his crew standing with bated breath, praying he's alright. That's all the motivation he needs to continue fighting. The giant captain grabs Akainu by the shirt collar, lifting him up into the air while still kneeling. The terror in Akainu's eyes is unmistakable. He knows he should have finished him off before. Whitebeard stands, slowly bringing Akainu up until they're eye to eye, and when Akainu gets a good look at his gaze and what it means, he launches him into the air like a rag doll. Whitebeard activates his tremor fruit and envelops his fist with it as he prepares. With his arm folded back and letting gravity bring Akainu to just the right spot, he waits, watching and charging up all he has in him. The rage boils as he pictures Ace and what's become of him because of this Marine. With every second that Akainu falls, he relives that devastating moment, and then the Vice Admiral is exactly where he wants him. With a terrifying backhand, Whitebeard smashes Akainu in the side so hard that most of his ribs had to be shattered. But that's not all. It's almost as if he struck the space around him. Akainu's side is dented in multiple spots as he moans in pain, Whitebeard clearly trying to pay him back for all the suffering he caused to Ace the Whitebeard family. Though Akainu was bleeding before, it gushes from his mouth now with the sheer power of this attack. Everything around them begins to split apart, the tremor fruit known for its unbelievable potential. It may even be able to destroy the world in the wrong hands, but demolishing one Marine isn't enough. No, Whitebeard takes down the Marina HQ with the attack. It breaks the ground everywhere around him, causing Marinas to fall underneath the base. Debris flies in all directions, spreading across the entire island of Marineford. Every building leading up to the top comes crumbling down like dominoes. Even Sengoku is helpless to this show of power, covering himself to avoid being injured. Large slabs of land begin to tip and slide, as if Whitebeard created an avalanche from the buildings. Marines scream in horror, unable to grab on to anything. Sengoku is left aghast, eyes wide in disbelief, and Akainu falls over at last, suffering from that monstrous attack. Whitebeard watches him slip down along with the ruptured ground, appreciating the view of him falling into the darkness below. Unfortunately, some pirates struggle to stay on land with the wreck that Whitebeard's made, and they cling to each other to climb up. Meanwhile, Marines keep falling into the water with no one to help them get away from danger. That's when it becomes evident that Whitebeard aimed his attack deliberately for the Marine side, forcing them away from his crew. The headquarters continues collapsing, with Navy flags falling down in a way to represent justice for Ace's loss. When the shaking finally ends, Marco is the first to notice where Whitebeard is, on the side of the Marines, prepared to hold them off. He stands unwavering at the edge of the fissure he's made, his back to his family. He breathes heavily, blood covering his body, but no one can deny what he's accomplished. Sengoku can't even believe he has this much power after all those injuries, but what makes this moment even better is that Whitebeard tells him, "You haven't seen anything yet. This towering captain will do whatever it takes to make sure no more of his children are lost today." He slams his weapon firmly on the cracked ground before swinging it with all his remaining resolve. As they start shooting at his fleeing crew, he slashes them and strikes them down, keeping them safe until the end. Dozens come for him, but he never falters. He pushes them back and sends shockwaves of tremors when more show up, damaging even more buildings. It looks like the 72-year-old strongest man in the world wins this battle. Unfortunately, Whitebeard wasn't counting on Blackbeard and his newly acquired crew jumping him. Along with the Marines he's still fighting off, and he loses his life in the end. We can't overlook the fact that Akainu pops up again despite his gnarly injuries, still trying to punch a hole through Luffy. His need for absolute justice must be as strong as Whitebeard's love for his family. Akainu survived, but he didn't kill Luffy. Whitebeard died, but his crew got away safely, so maybe it's more of a draw. This fight was both heartbreaking and satisfying in turns, but it left a lot of major consequences for the series. In terms of characters, we lost two powerhouse characters, Fire Fist Ace and Whitebeard, both from the same crew. Blackbeard the traitor acquires Whitebeard's devil fruit after he and his gang of fiends finish him off. Similarly, Luffy and Jinbei were scarred by their entanglement with Akainu, despite escaping with their lives, so I guess they gained something too, even if it's not as useful. And let's not forget how many pirates and Marines were injured and likely killed during this conflict, and it wasn't enough to capture Ace, turn him into the Marines, and start a massive war. The remaining Whitebeard crew fought Blackbeard's pirates in the Payback War, but lost everything. So without their precious father, and having lost so much, they decided to stop their story together and disbanded, and some places protected by Whitebeard in the past became less safe. Some surprising changes happen for the Navy too. Sengoku, the fleet admiral, steps down from his post, and so does Garp the Fist. Luffy's grandfather was seconds away from attacking his fellow Marine Akainu for what he did to Ace. If not for Sengoku holding him back, there might have been a very different end to the fight, or maybe Whitebeard wouldn't have needed to get involved at all. The two retired Marines stay on as mentors, but it's mostly for the Navy to save face. Speaking of which, the most vocal opposition to Akainu and his unbending beliefs is Kobe, and he's Garp's mentee, as well as a member of SWORD, a spy-like special forces team. In a more crazy turn of events, guess who gets promoted to Fleet Admiral? That's right, Sakazuki himself. I suppose he perfectly demonstrated his loyalty to the Navy in the war, if nothing else, and has done so by being a disgusting human being countless times. Interestingly, but not so surprisingly, the Marine HQ switched spots with the G1 base after the disaster that war was. This was a decision done by Sakazuki, who believed it would help keep threats at bay. Not only is the new base much larger, but it's much more defensive in nature. Oh, and let's not forget how the style changed from traditional Japanese architecture to a more Western design.